Welcome back. You're watching Eye on India, and we're having a very engaging conversation on what it will take to transform India's public sector banks. You talked about setting up an expert committee. So the Banks Board Bureau was set up with exactly this thought in mind, that it would be able to provide the roadmap for the so-called transformation of the banking sector. 3 years down the line, sir, as you rightfully pointed out, where it's the same business that we're talking about. It's exactly the same conversation, whether it's the ARC, which was discussed 3 years ago, or it's holding company structure, which again was discussed during the time of the Indradhanush plan, which the Minister of State for Finance then, Jayant Sinha, had put forward. I mean, we haven't really seen much forward movement on any of these so-called path-breaking reforms that were discussed. So do you believe that there is political will and appetite?
I largely agree with you that now there needs to be a political will, and that is why in my opening remarks I said that 360-degree transformation. What I mean is that on one hand, RBI is also raising certain issues of their handicaps in managing public sector banks. Banks are raising certain issues in terms of autonomy. Boards are raising certain issues. I think it's time that something like Narsimhan Committee, which made some fundamental reform measures and they worked very well, should now be set up to look at a variety of issues, the variety of suggestions made by BBB, the variety of suggestions RBI is calling for, the thinking of DFS, the thinking of board people. I think there is now need on an urgent basis some expert group to really look at. And before I conclude on this point, it's extremely important to look at Nayak Committee. I think Nayak Committee has made some brilliant suggestions. BBB was supposed to be only an interim measure before BIC comes into force. Now, we cannot manage transformation by picking up one thing from one place, another thing from another place. And we need to now weave the tapestry of transformation so that we are able to connect the missing dots. And in that context, my submission is that for government now to put banking reform on the top priority and look at that the various stakeholders, Reserve Bank, government, and the banks, bank boards, they all come together to discuss in a very diagnostic manner, backed by some research support, and come out with a major banking reform agenda.
Mr. Tiwari, I want you to comment on the point that we just heard there from Mr. Khandelwal. You know, there have been so many committees in the past, Narsimhan Committee, the PJ Nayak Committee, etc. The Banks Board Bureau itself made several recommendations which the Banks Board Bureau acknowledges haven't been taken forward by the government. So this tapestry that Mr. Khandelwal spoke of, whether it is the holding company structure or it is any of these other reforms that we spoke of, or Mr. Patel's pitch, fresh plea to the government saying, give us more supervisory control over public sector banks. What should the starting point be today? And let's be realistic. We are now headed into a general election. How much of this is going to be possible, sir, over the next few months?
Very rightly pointed out, like just about 11 months or so left for the next general elections. But reforming a sector like banking in Indian context, it won't happen tomorrow morning. It would take its own time. But as Dr. Khandelwal said, there should be a holistic, all-comprehensive approach for the issues which have been discussed in public domain for a long time, right? Starting from Narsimhan Committee right up to Dr. PJ Nayak Committee and BBB. What I feel that one issue which Dr. Saab spoke about, the BIC, I think this was also briefly touched upon in the 15-16 annual budget of the government. But I think Reserve Bank has got some reservations about, because this BIC will have all kinds of banks in its ambit. From bandwidth would be from plus X to minus Y. So from investors' point of view, when they say that just about everything is coming in the same bucket, I mean, what will encourage them to invest in it? and how even this BIC will allocate the capital. So that is another challenge. We may put in place that BIC structure, holdco structure, but going forward, we should take this discussion or through a committee or a larger group, whereby each and every, you talk about the transformation, you talk about the NPA, you talk about the consolidation, you talk about the capitalization, anything and everything which are the important contours to set the banking system right, I think they have to be discussed, debated and arrived at and then acted upon.
Do you believe that consolidation at this point in time, given all the problems that the banking sector is faced with, necessarily is the best idea, it's the best solution, it makes sense today?
This is not the best idea, let me be honest, because when the situation is so depressing currently in terms of NPAs, in terms of many other things that banking industry needs to do, at this point of time, when it is very difficult to manage large size organization, to add to its challenges by merging banks, and it doesn't solve any problem. If you bring other bank, there is a capital problem. It comes with its attendant problems. Banks are not in pink of health. When you go to private sector, they make a lot of assessment, which entity to take, why we should take, how it will create value, whether it is 2 + 2 = 5. Here, I think all those factors, in my opinion, at this point of time, the time is just not ripe. Having said that, I should say that yes, there is a need for consolidation. There is for too long we have discussed it. So again, my point, time and again, I'm saying my point is only this, that let some wise group of people look at everything on plate.
So
in
you're
every
part of
committee
a wise group
and
of people
decide
that
what is good for Indian banking system.
As Abizer pointed out, how many more committees are needed,
I'm not
sir?
saying.
You were a part of a wise
all
group
I'm
of people
saying
that was set up
I'm
to
not
look
saying
at exactly
how
these
many
issues.
committees. I am saying somebody has to now look at all these committees and finally give a reform agenda to government. Today, the new generation bankers possibly would not know what Narsimhan committee or any other committee. I think the point is, each committee has made something, some group of wise people, and I don't say you have a longer duration. This can be done in 3 months. As Abir said, that this Naik committee has made some very significant proposals. And we only need to take decisions. And certainly, at any point of time when you take decision, you do require some wise people to deliberate those things. I'm not talking of any committee giving a bulky report and again you are deliberating on that. I think decision makers, and this should be at the highest level where the decision makers are now able to take decisions on certain proposals which already exist.
View that a lot of people are also expressing is that, maybe there's just way too many experiments, as Mr. Tiwari was pointing out. You've just started the IBC process. Now you want to experiment with the ARC. And as Mr. Tiwari rightfully pointed out, it will be an experiment to start with before things stabilize. You're barely stabilizing the IBC. Why don't you focus on that and address the issue of what is causing the NPAs and then look at the capital requirement, etc. separately? Would that make more sense? Focus on resolution via the IBC and try and address or diagnose the problem to do with NPA and address that separately?
First of all, these are two very mutually exclusive problems. Why I'm saying this is, improving credit processes is one leg which we have to work on, so that there are no future capital erosions that happen. So, for example, if the 2,71,000 crore were to come in and a multiple of that were to be lent in the same way as it was lent in the past, then you will have another problem 5 years down the line. So, I think that's one problem that has to be addressed. Nobody can take that away. The other issue is, how do you make recoveries out of the existing 10 lakh crore problem more efficient? And I think that is where I think if an aggregated exposure approach is taken to resolving assets, as in not against 15 bankers trying to decide. I've been in JLFs, frankly, where there have been 15 bankers and they're not able to conclude a decision. I mean, I think a husband and a wife can't reach an argument. You can't expect 15 bankers to reach a consensus. So my view is that if that doesn't happen, how will we reach optimized resolution? Even if we have NCLT, we may have whatever. I think we need the expertise, we need external capital, and we need aggregated decision making for the current mess to be sorted out. And just one more point I'd like to make, Shereen, regarding this consolidation bit. Why I dare not agree with these people that it's not the right thing. It is clearly not the right thing. Why right now, but for a long time to come? And I don't, for me, elections don't matter, frankly. Though elections are a good enough reason not to do it. The real issue is, if you look at the market cap of our public sector banking system, it's around 4,80,000 crores. Out of which SBI is 2,40,000 crores. So by doing a BIC, what you're really going to do is raise money for the other banks on the back of SBI's market cap. So that is extremely required, first of all. Unless we plan to merge all the banks into SBI, then that's a different issue. But if you don't want to do that, which we should not do, obviously, the way it's going to be is that if you do a BIC, you will have to keep those banks alive, provide capital to those banks, get them to a level when they are mergeable, and then talk about this 2 plus 2, which could equal to 5.
Mr. Khandelwal, Mr. Tiwari and Abizer, appreciate you joining us here on Eye on India with your thoughts on re-examining the issue of transforming India's public sector banks. With that, it is time for us to wrap up this show. From all of us here, goodbye. Many thanks for watching.